Welcome to this episode of The World According to Irina Tsukerman, our very special series on global politics on the KJ Masterclass Live. Irina Tsukerman is a US based national security and human rights lawyer, as well as a renowned geopolitical analyst. Her writings and commentary have appeared in diverse US and international media and have been translated to over a dozen languages. Every fortnight in the world, according to Irina Tsukerman, we traverse the geopolitical landscape and delve into pressing international issues and gain insight from Irina's expert perspective. Welcome to the show once again, Irina.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year, and I'm very glad to be here.
Wonderful. Welcome to the show. Happy New Year to you too, and Happy New Year to all the viewers that are joining us, and we'll see it later on. So, a very Happy New Year in that sense, but not so very Happy New Year in the sense of this New Orleans attack. Irina, tell us a bit about as it unfolds. What is this all about? How we should understand about it in this part of the world? Not a Happy New Year in that sense, if I can tell, especially, just 20 days before the inauguration of a new president in the US.
Well, this attack appears to be quite more complex than meets the eye. There seems to be a 2-for-1 incident because there was also an occurrence in Las Vegas. But let me start with New Orleans. The attacker, a 42-year-old man, was a former U.S. military. He had an ISIS flag on the back of the pickup truck that he used to drive into a crowd of people, killing 15 and injuring over 30. He then left the car and started shooting, wounding 2 police officers before he was shot to death by the police, and explosives were also found um, in the car. Uh, he is originally from Texas. The pickup truck had Texas license plates. He had expressed support for ISIS on social media and in video messages, and he um, he came to New Orleans a few days before the attack, which is being investigated as a terrorist attack. At this time, from Texas, it is entirely possible that he was there to stake out the situation, to stake out the circumstances. Now, what is interesting is that the same day, a Cybertruck, the famous Elon Musk Cybertruck, exploded in front of a Trump hotel in Las Vegas, killing an unidentified individual inside the car and wounding 7 people outside. The Cybertruck had firecrackers inside. It's also believed that it may have had a bomb, and it was the Cybertruck and the rental and the pickup truck both were registered to the same rental company and were rented on the same day. And
Right.
of course, looking into the paper registration papers for the pickup truck in New Orleans, it appears that whoever it was registered to someone other than the attacker, um, as was the and of course the individual inside the Cybertruck has not been identified yet. So it appears
Right.
the Cybertruck incident is also being investigated as a possible terrorist attack.
Right. Right. In terms of death toll, what is the death toll? The last I read was, several hours back before going to sleep, and today here in India it's early morning, around 10 people. But do you have any latest on this, on the death toll from this attack?
15 people in New Orleans and 1 person so far in Las Vegas, and quite a number of wounded in New Orleans, over 30 people. So it was a very serious attack. Um,
Right, right, Irina. So to understand it, just as I said, just 20 odd days before the inauguration of a new president, what does this aim to want to achieve? through this attack? If we understand that this was a planned attack, a terrorist attack in that sense, if they are investigating in that way, what would be the impact in the backdrop of all these drones and all? It seems to be, giving an impression that people will start not feeling so safe as they should be, especially in a country like the United States of America.
Well, it's not surprising that ISIS would try to plan some attacks in the US. There have been numerous ISIS cells investigated in court over the years. There's been individuals who pled allegiance to ISIS or who tried to join ISIS who've been arrested and sentenced. But this attack seems to be a lot more coordinated and sophisticated than many of the so-called lone wolf incidents, or even the more sophisticated cells that were planned. It actually reminds me more of the Al Qaeda style attacks that we were more used to. Maybe not as big in scale, but far more planned, using um, shell cars registered to other people, using quite a bit of subterfuge. There's a question of whether there is a state actor who could be connected to these attacks. And of course, the messaging could be anything from simply intimidating the public and sending a message in support of the terrorists to opposing Donald Trump. After all, it is not it is hardly coincidental that the Elon Musk designed cyber truck was parked outside a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. I don't know whether even it appears that the incidents could be linked, judging by the rental company um, situation. So it could be a protest against Trump and his presidency, but it could also be something more sinister, even than that sort of homegrown extremism. It could be that uh, there is a sophisticated plan of multiple attacks that is in the works, and we could see more of these incidents in the coming days, possibly leading up to something big. And we've seen similar attacks in Europe when multiple locations were attacked by different people, and it was only over time that they appeared to be coordinated. The terrorist organizations are clearly capable of planning fairly sophisticated attacks. They're not always turn out to be not always easily caught by the security services. And the other issue is, if the state actors are indeed involved, they could be using terrorist organizations like ISIS as a cover to cause havoc and to terrorize the US.
Right, Irina. I'm a bit intrigued by the use of state actors. What do you mean by state actors here?
It could be anything. It could be Iran, for instance, which has in the past threatened and attempted to assassinate US officials, as well as to abduct or assassinate opposition members and dissidents inside the United States. They've also attempted to stage terrorist attacks against opposition all over Europe, and they've also backed terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda spent years located in Iran and received substantial support from Iran before 9/11 and after. And former Secretary of State Pompeo uh, made that mentioned as much right before leaving office. Sadly, that that connection was never fully explored as it should have been. We know that Iran has also backed the Taliban, provided them with arms and training, not to mention assorted um, proxies in the Middle East, Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas. But we have also seen Russia engage in that type of behavior, especially more recently. We've seen the reawakening of the Red Army brigades in Germany, the organization that formerly that in the past has been backed by the communist Soviet Union for a while, eventually moved on to work with Al Qaeda and with Hezbollah in the past. and was thought to be dormant until in the last year. There were incidents of individual activists found with explosives, and uh, uh, it's unclear how many people are still active in that organization. There's been multiple attempted terrorist attacks by Russians in Paris leading up to the Olympics, um, involving arson and attempted explosions and incidents of that sort. And there is a thought to be potential connection to other incidents as well, not major in scale like the massive terrorist attacks we've seen by ISIS in Europe in the in the middle of the past decade, but possibly rising up. And we've also seen Russia back Iran-backed terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah. We've seen evidence of Russian military intelligence training the Taliban, and just as the Taliban partners up with Al Qaeda um, in Afghanistan, including joint training camps. We have seen Russians negotiating weapons sales to Houthis. There's been findings of Russian weapons in Hezbollah um, tunnels, and of course, incidents involving Hamas as well. So there's been very extensive state level penetration and cooperation, both between Russia and Iran, and in support of the proxies, and also individual incidents that seem to be simply anti Western in nature. So it should come as no surprise if one or both of these countries were somehow involved in using terrorists to stage such attacks, or providing known identified radicals, extremists motivated by ISIS, with the means to carry out their own agenda.
Right, Irina. So let's look at it. How does it impact the inauguration of the new president? It's second in 18 days. It's the inauguration of the new president. Will there be a air of uncertainty? Will there be task cut out for the new president?
Well, I do think that the security is going to be very tight. Inaugurations are typically very crowded outdoor outdoor events. I don't think that these incidents in those two cities will derail the events in Washington. I think a lot of security is going to be present, and I think there will be quite a distance between the crowds in general and the president elect and state officials going in. But I wonder if there's going to be an attempted disruption elsewhere, or if a Boston Marathon type scenario could be could be attempted. The Boston Marathon happened when some a group of Chechen individuals, actually brothers, essentially put in bombs in garbage can around the crowded marathon area, causing deaths as well as severe injuries. And that was something relatively easy to carry out, because when you have a very crowded setting and the person is not directly threatening anyone could put an object somewhere without getting caught. And it was only miraculously that the event wasn't deadly. Then that incident wasn't even more deadly. Mm, um, so that is one possible scenario that I think the Secret Service and others need to be prepared for. And there are also concerns that the security may not be up to the task after the numerous mishaps involving the Secret Service during the two attempted assassination attempts against Donald Trump during his candidacy last year. So there will probably be other organizations involved as backup.
Absolutely. Hope we'll wait for to see what comes out of these investigations. Be that as it may, we'll be looking at the inauguration of the new U.S. president. But Trump is making, even before the inauguration now, he's talking about acquiring Greenland, Panama Canal, and Canada. Means how should I understand what is this? Is it some joke or some real serious bid? some political pressure. Help us understand, especially as I said, I thought these are all independent places, and Trump is talking about these.
Well, with Canada, I think it's the closest to being a trolling attempt at Trudeau, whom Trump refers to as Governor Trudeau, both because he disagrees with his policies, and I think there's also a genuine personal distaste of some sort that emerged during his first term in office. Um, Trudeau is highly likely to lose the elections, and so this is kind of a way of putting pressure and basically showing that the current leadership is not competent and would be better under US control. I don't think that line is going to be pushed past elections. I think this is just sort of a way of needling the current leadership of Canada. The Greenland purchase effort is more serious because this is something that the Trump administration considered during the first term in office and did not really follow up. But now there seems to be more of a push. It's not the feasibility of such a solution is not really. Strictly speaking, out of the question, but it's also not very likely because Greenland is an autonomous has autonomy, but although it's technically under Danish control, it's very rich in natural resources. It's already hosting a U.S. military uh, base, NORAD, and it's a very strategically located um, Baltic territory that brings together various routes through the Arctic. The Arctic has become a place of strategic maneuvers for environmental and scientific explorations and a military naval race between Russia and China on the one hand and U.S., Canada, Norway, and others on the other. So there is indeed concern about foreign interference, especially after the latest apparently joint operations between Russia and China targeting internet cables in the Baltic Sea near Finland, Lithuania, and other countries. There's concern about Chinese penetration into Greenland. None of these incidents, however, rise to the level of mm, simply being able to take over Greenland because it does have an autonomy, and any such decision would have to go through the Greenland current government. And even if such an agreement were to conclude, it does not necessarily guarantee U.S. access to the natural resources or to the geostrategic positions to expand military bases. They would be able to ban China or other foreigners from entering, but they would not necessarily be able to expand their own capabilities. So far, the Denmark and Greenland governments both rejected this offer, and the Denmark government is actually sending additional security assistance to Greenland, both as a way of deterring threats and also to basically send a message to the U.S. Let's see where that goes, but it could be a sort of pressure mechanism as well to ensure that the Danish government takes security concerns seriously and to try to negotiate some sort of a natural resource access deal with Greenland because overall it does have more natural resources and rare earth minerals than China, and that could be a great way of securing the needed ingredients for assorted technologies that the US needs without having to rely on China, which has also been cranking down on that. As for the Panama Canal, I don't think it's a feasible option. Panama Canal cannot be easily returned to the United States. It was a concession and cannot be simply the treaty cannot simply be revoked or broken just because the incoming administration disagrees with the way things are currently, whether geopolitically or security wise. There are genuine reasons for concern because Iranian, Chinese ships have been looking towards that area, and US has reasons to be concerned about trade, and this is a good reason enough to revive the Monroe Doctrine that the Biden administration rejected, essentially blocking foreign adversarial powers from entering Latin American strategic waterways that could threaten U.S. security. That is quite a reasonable concern, and I think many people would welcome uh, such an articulation, but simply taking over Panama Canal is just not an option. So if this is just a way of signaling of a return to a more serious consideration for Latin America, let's hopefully it will take us it will cause the new administration to take the appropriate steps to secure U.S. interests, but it will have to be through means other than research, purchase over repurchase or retaking of a canal that is no longer in the U.S. hands.
Right, Irina. I don't know what the fate of these bids will be, but one thing I can tell you is that if any of these places does, Trump is successful in any of the places, there might be a few more Trump towers in all these places overlooking either the Panama Canal or in Greenland or in any other place. Be that as it may, two countries who are surely watching at what is happening in the US are, I'm sure, is Russia and Ukraine. Over the Christmas, Russia has attacked Ukraine, and Biden has promised to ramp up military assistance as North Koreans soldiers have suffered deadly blows. How should we look at that? Biden promising something, things happening at home. It's almost like the end of the Biden era, we can say, in that sense. How should we look at this whole thing panning out? Do you think, this war is going to end soon, or does it look like with all these attacks in the US, Russia will, bite a bit more than it was supposed to earlier on?
Well, things don't look too promising. Even Trump has changed his rhetoric from promising to resolve this issue in the first 24 hours in office to saying that it could take quite a bit longer and that the situation is complicated. Russia has already rejected peace overtures from the Trump administration. They rejected peace negotiations. Um, US cannot directly force them to come to diplomatic agreement of any sort. It could leverage, however, its ability to arm Ukraine to put pressure on Russia and to weaken it sufficiently that a compromise would seem a better option than an effort to advance and take over more territory. Whether or not that's the current plan is unclear, but Sebastian Gorka, who is nominated for the position of the senior director on counterterrorism, boldly stated that that is the plan if Russia continues to resist diplomatic rapprochement efforts. For now, the $2.5 billion that in aid that Biden has promised could not come at a better time because despite huge human and equipment losses, Russia continues to advance, albeit, albeit not very quickly. And those weapons could make a difference. Europe has also ramped up its assistance and has pledged additional assistance, but their own capacity building is just taking a very long time. And frankly, U.S. capacity is also not optimized. It has been increasing since the start of the war, but it's still not where it should be. It's also suffering internal issues related to its navy, with an eye towards China, especially, but it's off to a pretty slow start. The question is, of course, is Biden, why has Biden allowed Russia to make so much progress before finally relocating the aid? Was he waiting for the outcome of the elections? Was he hoping to attract, the naysayers, those who are opposed to arming Ukraine? If so, it was a very bad strategy. First of all, he lost the election anyway, quite significantly, and second, he now is leaving the incoming administration with a huge mess on its hands, and maybe that's the plan. Maybe this is Biden's way of saying, well, we are going to both offend your supporters by giving all this money in one shot at the very end, and we're going to basically leave you trying to figure out a solution without proposing any clear framework. Whatever the case may be, it's not a good look, but as I said, there isn't much of a choice. Losing Ukraine is really not an option from any strategic perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm still trying to make sense of Biden's promise, especially a few days just for him to go as the US president. In the meantime, you see, Russia has attacked a Azerbaijani commercial plane. And what does it mean? Why did Russia attack a commercial plane, and what did it want to achieve here?
So the attack started out as as a sort of accident. Accident not in the sense that they didn't mean to shoot. Accident in the sense that their identifying equipment mistook a commercial plane for for military drone, and so they started firing without really taking the time to figure out what what the object was. And the fact is they spent huge amount of money on the appropriate equipment, and still it failed completely in this instance. But besides this clear attack that was due to a mistake in mistaking a civilian plane for military drone, a foreign military drone of unclear origin, which is bizarre enough in itself. They have tried to cover up this, and that the cover up was, as they say, worse than the crime. They attempted to force the plane into the sea in order to sink all the evidence of the initial attack, and essentially to try to d- have the plane destroyed. Eventually, the pilots were able to maneuver the plane long enough to make it to Kazakhstan and to crash land it, causing the deaths of the pilots and a portion of the people, but managing to save about the half of the remaining civilians on board. Um, since then, Putin has tried to initially try to distract from what happened, and basically initially he claimed he tried to make it seem like a complete accident or mistake. And 3 days of complete denial, which Baku did not did not accept, because based on what is being leaked into the media, the Azerbaijani intelligence knew basically right away that there was an attack and an explosion consistent with a military attack rather than some accident. Um, so eventually there was a half-hearted apology from Russia, but so far no real investigation yet. No offers of reparation. They're just trying to kind of write it off on the cheap, and of course, all of that has been met with a great deal of consternation from Baku, which especially perplexing because Russia held itself out to be a friendly country to Azerbaijan. They've been trying to regain influence there. Assist, they have indirectly assisted Azerbaijan with reclaiming its occupied territories, which, by the way, the Soviet Union helped occupy by backing Armenia back in the day, by not providing Armenia this time around with direct assistance 3 years ago, over 3 years ago now. But ultimately, at the end of the day, their agenda is to retain influence, especially vis-a-vis Turkey in the South Caucasus, and so this incident sets them back even further and provides Azerbaijan with an excuse to distance themselves from Moscow, as opposed to essentially be forced into a position of negotiating with them, due to the fact that the Biden administration has not been particularly friendly to Azerbaijan, and neither has been the Democratic Senate. But on the other hand, there was also the sense of uh, a debt owed over Russia's abstention uh, from direct interference in the Second Karabakh War. Now, all of that, I think, is done for. Trump is expected to be much more open towards cooperation with Azerbaijan, which leaves Azerbaijan in a better leveraging position against vis-a-vis its neighbors such as Russia and Iran. And on the other hand, this incident kind of uh, makes it clear that there's no need to essentially all the debt perceived the real has been clearly repaid, and now Russia is the one in the position of debt.
Absolutely, Irina. The world seems to be looking at much more places of peace, and which is especially in this new year. We thought about Russia, we talked about Ukraine, but that will have to wait. But as of now, if we go to Syria, their STS is forming transitional government, looking to unite militias under defense ministry umbrella. So, what does that mean? Do we expect peace there? Is it looking like that? How should we understand?
Well, the signs. So there's very mixed messaging coming out from HES. On the one hand, the they've appointed a woman as the head of a bank. They're trying to send message of tolerance, pluralism, claiming that governance will be decentralized. But on the other hand, they're claiming that the next elections likely won't be for another 4 years, which is a very long time. Another issue is that they are not don't appear to be in control of all of the militias. So while some of them are eager to join the defense forces, others are engaging in conflicts with the Alawites and the Kurds, um, which is a threat. And there's a concern that HCS may not hold out on its own. It only has 30,000 fighters. The rest of the over a dozen terrorist organizations and assorted armed groups are scattered all over the country, and there's no real way to control all of them simultaneously. So that remains to be seen. The third issue of concern is that Turkey and Qatar, and now Saudi Arabia, apparently pledging their um, backing to HGS, but all of these countries have their own interests here, and namely the Qatar Turkish pipeline, which would benefit Saudi Arabia. In addition to those countries, uh, Turkey is interested in extending its influence over Syria, which is a major concern for the Kurds as well as many of the local minorities. And of course, Qatar does not have the military hold to really control the country, but they can continue cause havoc by funding armed groups or assisting Turkey in extending control over Syria and essentially Islamizing it, indoctrinating locals with a radical ideology and turning it into another basically Islamist state. So all of these things are quite concerning and very likely to happen.
Right, right. Now, from there, let's move to China. China is taking a different road from Belt Road to Health Silk Road in Africa via investment. Tell us a bit about this Health Silk Road. What does it mean? How should we understand what is this road about?
So China has wisened up since its early investments in Africa, and it's trying to mirror what the U.S. is doing. U.S. Has not been backing many many governments lately, but they have tried to win goodwill in some pivotal countries through humanitarian operations, among other things, which include sending goodwill ships to perform free surgeries and provide healthcare for the locals, and also building hospitals and things that are actually quiet PR efforts that build good relations with the locals without necessarily being widely advertised. China, up until this point, dependent largely on dollar diplomacy and debt trap diplomacy to acquire influence, but that has sort of backfired, and not everybody's been happy with that. And China's actually started to lose a lot of its hold, and also challenged by other competitors, including India, including increasingly Japan in some locations, and of course, various Middle Eastern states vying for influence. So now it's trying to mirror the US approach by investing in particular industries and sectors that are essential and necessary in developing countries, including the health sector, which is, of course, a major priority. So it's trying to create this sense of care and partnership and beneficence beyond simply exploiting local natural resources by um, basically creating a medical version of medical infrastructure road that connects China to all of these countries. And I think this is something to be concerned about, because these sort of things do speak to people, and nobody is eager to give them up afterwards. This is a quite a different approach, and it should be watched very carefully.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everything should be watched very carefully wherever it happens. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The World According to Irina Shukerman, our very special series on global politics on the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.